channel before, I would say welcome. My name is Elin. I'm talking about books and book-related stuff. And that's basically what I do on this channel. So it's already April and I am going to make a March wrap-up. I'm going to talk about the books I read in March. March was a really good reading month for me. I usually have a fairly active life. Even though I am so fortunate to have a job that allows me to work from home and keep busy, I don't do all the other stuff that I usually do. Like go to the yoga center to do yoga or go on trips or things like that. I was actually supposed to be in Gothenburg right now, but obviously I'm not due to the situation. So yeah, because of the coronavirus situation, we are pretty much forced to stay at home. And to me, it's not a big problem. I can work from home, as I said, and I also keep busy but with reading books. I really enjoy reading, and hence I actually managed to read 10 books. 10 books in March, and for me that's a huge number. And I actually finished 3 non-fiction books. I normally wouldn't even read that much non-fiction in such a short time, and having to actually finish so many books, it's for me, it feels really good. So yeah, let's get to it and talk about the books I read in March. So the first book I read was One of Us Is Lying by Karen M. McManus. So this is a young adult book. I work as a YI or young adult librarian in general, but I also do a lot of technical stuff in my job. Because it's a fairly small library, so I cannot do just like young adults. That would be a little too narrow. So I read this. It's basically about 5 students at high school. American. This is very American in many ways, but it's like 5 students and they have detention, and they walk into detention for like having their mobile phones or something like that, and then something happens and one of them dies. And this student who dies, he wasn't very much liked. So the all other 4 students kind of have motives to have taken this student's life. So they're trying to figure out who actually killed the 5th student. So yeah. Some of the book I felt was a little bit like, oh, have I read this before and have I heard this story before? And yes, there are parts of it, but still, did I expect the end? At some point, yes. But then again, I think if you're an advanced reader, you will detect who was actually the killer in this book. So but it's still quite a page turner, so really exciting, and I really enjoyed it. So for a young adult book, I think it's a good read. And the next book I read, which is actually connected to something else that I'm doing at work. So this is to gather knowledge for me for something else, for another book that I've read a couple of times now. I'm not talking about that book now because it's one of my April books already. But that's this book, Den største forbrytelsen by Marte Michelet. And it's about the Norwegian Holocaust, about Norwegian Jews and the Second World War, and what actually did happen, why did it happen, how did it affect Norway, the Jews, and the Holocaust. So very interesting read. I'm going to talk about another book in the same field by the same author. I'm actually going to just pick that out. It was a few books between these, but I'm going to talk about this at the same time. Hva visste hjemmefronten? Both books are by Martin Michelet, and it's about Holocaust in Norway. And this claims that the resistant movement in Norway knew more than they kind of wants people to know. But there has been this book came out a couple of years ago, and it was quite controversial. And there's been quite of a debate what actually happened, what didn't happen, what is true, what's not true. So both books looks into the Jews in Norway during the Second World War and the Holocaust and what happened. And this was something I knew some things about, but not as much as I do know, that's for sure. And I thought it was really, really interesting to read. So I really, really quite enjoyed them, even though they're quite like, some of it can be a little bit, not exactly depressing, but quite hard to read, especially when they look at, because you just look at the situation, how it was in Norway. You also have to look at the rest of Europe, the rest of Europe, to kind of see what happened there. And there are things that happened towards Jews in the rest of the world or the rest of Europe, especially Eastern Europe, that was quite heartbreaking. It was, I find it hard to find words to express the impression it made on me, because it's like gruesome things that happened. So yeah, very, very interesting reads indeed. And on a much lighter note, I read this very inspiring book by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Chris Riddle, and it's Art Matters, because your imagination can change the world. It's about writing and being creative, as well as libraries and reading fiction, and why it is important, why libraries are important. And of course this touches my heart, because I am a librarian and I work in a library, and I find libraries so important. And if you don't understand why a library is important, shame on you. So, Art Matters by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Chris Riddle. It's really beautiful. I really enjoy this. It's not a very hard read. It's very easy read. It just took me a couple of evenings. I was ill when I was reading it, and I needed something light. So yeah. Another book. It's a poetry book. It's a Norwegian book again. Når jeg gammel nok til å skyte faren min? When am I old enough to shoot my father? And it's a poetry book, and it's poems for young adults, I think, or youth people. So it's poetry, but it's not very hard to read in that way that it's poetry, but it's kind of still easy to understand, even though it's what it is about, because it is about abuse. So in that way, it's kind of heartbreaking again. It's hard to read when it's like abuse and things like that, in my opinion. But yeah, it was a very, very good read, and I think it's very good that you have this kind of books for young adults and young people to read when there's about abuse, because there's like short, because it's like an easy read when there's like short sentences. It's also like illustrated, not a whole lot of them, and so very interesting and very, very good as well. And I also read a picture book. Kan pingviner sykle? If you know me, you will know that penguins, I love penguins. I have a penguin tattoo on my arm, as you can see. So yeah, can penguins cycle? And this is a fun picture book about penguins, and it's basically facts, actually. I wouldn't wouldn't say that it's non-fiction because it's a picture book, but it goes into like facts about penguins, especially the emperor penguins. They are kind of the center of the story here. Because there are a lot of different kinds of penguins in this world, but probably the most well-known penguin is the emperor penguin, and I find them really, very, really fascinating. So yeah, a fun little picture book that I really, really enjoyed. And then I read another young adult poetry book, Følg med nå. Attention Now, maybe you could say the name is, by Trygve Skaug. It's, I think it was like, I'm not sure if it got an award or if it was shortlisted for an award. It's one of the two. And I must say I was actually slightly disappointed by this because I thought the poems were a bit, yeah. So not quite my cup of tea. They were a bit too simple really, and they didn't have enough substance for me. So next book up for me is Alt dette Tokyo, or All This is Tokyo. It's a book on Tokyo, and I really, really loved it. This was just such a wonderful read. And yeah, again, it's a non-fiction book, and it's about Tokyo, and it's written by Ina Ström, and she pretty much takes us from the part to part of Tokyo. So you kind of start in Shinjuku, and you kind of go through the city from part to part, and it's also like illustrated with like beautiful photos like that. And it's such a wonderful book, and it teaches you about Tokyo and also about like Japan in general slightly as well, because it talks about like culture, history of the town, history of Japan. And I have not been among those who has been like super interested in Japan. I know there's quite a lot of people in Norway who are like really, really into Japanese stuff and find Japan really fascinating. And I haven't really been one of those, but after reading this, I must say I was really fascinated. It's a culture that is so, so different from Norway and Norwegian culture. And she has published a new book on Japan that I got. She was kind enough to send it to me. This is, of course, a library book. I think almost all of the books I read in March, just a few that weren't library books, but most of them are library books because I do use the library a lot. So anyway, I got that book and I'm really looking forward to reading it. I'm not quite sure when I will have the time to do that, but at some point I will, and I am looking forward to it. But yeah, so All This is Tokyo. It was such an interesting read, and I loved how it was like just structured. And yeah, did it make me want to go to Japan? I've never really wanted to go to Japan before, other than I want to go to see the whole world. Yeah, but no, I would actually like to go to Japan. However, at the moment, we are not able to travel. So maybe one day. Before I go to Japan, I want to go to India though. But yeah, such an interesting read, and I'm looking forward to read her next book as well. Next up is this book. And this book was given to me by the publisher and the author. It's Udir by Kristine Tofte. Such a fun read. It's also young adult. I enjoy this so much. It's quite easy read. I'm not one of those who kind of reads really fast, but for me, I didn't use more than a week. I read more than one book at the time though, so I read other books as well. And I have work as well, so so yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It has like Norse mythology as a basis in a way. I know some people say it's fantasy, but to me, it's not that much fantasy. If you're going to say it's fantasy, I would say it's fantasy like Harry Potter is fantasy. But this book is nothing like Harry Potter because they're really, really different in so many ways. But there are magic in this, and there are Norse creatures in it, and it's such a fun read. So it is by Kristine Tofte. So if you read Norwegian, I would highly, highly recommend this. And my last March read is this book, another book that was given me by the publisher. It's Sinne by Ann-Helene Kolås Ingebrigtsen, and I know the author. I have met the author, I've known her for a few years, so I have known that she has been writing books, or this is her debut novel. It's young adult, but I think it's still a debut novel, even though it's young adult. So I knew she was like getting a book published at some point, or hoping at first, and then I knew that she had been accepted, and I have been waiting and looking forward to reading her book for quite a while. So that was quite nerve-wracking to get the book and then going to read it, and especially when I saw a lot of people saying really good things about it. It kind of, you know, when you have expectation and they get higher, you're kind of worried that maybe the book doesn't reach the expectations you have, but this definitely did. I also saw that a lot of people said that they had been crying over this book, and I was thinking, nah, I'm not going to cry. I'm not one of those people. Well, shame on me, because I did cry, especially towards the end of the book. So this book is about a 15-year-old girl who has ADHD ADHD in Norwegian. It's so much easier to say than in English. Sorry. Anyway, so it's about this girl and her feelings and how her world works and how things are for her and how she experiences the world and being a teen and all that stuff. So yeah, so I really, really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. Well deserved. And such an important book as well, because there are not many girls, I've not seen a lot of books at least, about girls with ADHD. So yeah, so in that perspective, it's also important because it gives you a new perspective of things, in my opinion. It's in many ways a diverse book. So if you know Norwegian, please read it, especially if you work with younger people. And that's it. That's it for now. I don't know when I will make a new video. I mean, I do read, and that's pretty much what I do, and I don't have a lot of ideas for videos at the moment. So if you have anything, because all my plans that I were planning on doing, I have to pause them because I can't do anything about them. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you are staying home. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're well. I hope you're good and you're busy with your life, reading books or something or other. And that's it for now. And I will see you in my next video, whenever that will be. So bye now.